Welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. My name's Jeff Beers. Today I'm going to be looking at AMD stock for the rest of 2020. We're coming off of the pandemic and the recent stock market crash. And the question is AMD stock a good stock to buy right now in 2020? And what does the immediate future hold? Quick disclaimer, as always, my stock picks and projections are for entertainment purposes only. Please make sure you talk to a financial professional before taking on the risks of investing in stocks. However, if you do enjoy stock market analysis, going deep on companies like AMD, getting investment tips, and watching personal finance videos, then please subscribe to the 40 Finance channel. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed so far. Okay, so hopefully everybody knows that AMD is a chip company, and they focus primarily on processor chips in laptops and desktops. They do have a couple of other plays in things like graphics production and databases, but the real meat of what they're doing is processors for desktops and laptops. It's a very popular chip, particularly for gamers, and really their key business proposition to this point has been providing value at the high performance end of processing. So as you have Intel and Nvidia competing in sort of the same space, AMD's prices typically come in cheaper than those products that they compete against those competitors. So not only have they developed a great value proposition in terms of processors, but they also have a pretty passionate fan base, particularly amongst gamers. And it is with gamers where AMD has really focused a lot of their attention. I grabbed this little screenshot off of their homepage, and I would say, approximately 2/3 of the homepage of their AMD website is focused on gaming performance and getting the most out of gaming for their users. So now with gaming being such a hot market right now and infinitely trending up, it seems, you also have a boost from the recent stay-at-home orders where gaming was probably one of the top hobbies that people had. AMD is in a good spot right now. The one catch to that is, that they play in a value space, right? So there is competitors, Intel and Nvidia, who both technically perform better if you get down to raw performance testing. However, AMD's play is to serve the masses with more affordable options and yet still get premium output from their chips. So it's an interesting place to sit, essentially at the consummate number 2 if you're just looking at processor performance. But when you throw in a different price point, then AMD really excels at this sort of price per performance. That is an important concept to understand as you think about AMD in the future. It's not to say that they're not gunning to be number 1 in certain categories, but they have created this nice little comfort zone of delivering quality and value, and that's resonated very well. Okay, let's take a look at AMD's stock price today and see where everything stands. You see Advanced Micro Devices stock today sits at $53.50. Current PE ratio is 125, which is, notably high. Looking up top there, you have a forward PE of 52. You have trailing 12 months revenue of $7.25 billion, cash on hand of $1.3 billion, and a small debt load of $700 million. So overall, I would say that they're on pretty good ground in terms of raw fundamentals. The PE ratio stands out as something that's pretty high, at least to me, but the chip sector in general is trading at a premium right now, and AMD is right in there. The 52-week range for AMD stock is $27 to $59. And so being at $53 today, you are actually only about 10% off of the 52-week high. So generally speaking, if you're getting in a new position with AMD, you're coming in right near their 52-week high. All right, but 52-week highs aside, is AMD a good value today at $53.50? Let's take a look at some of the valuation metrics over the past several quarters to get a feel for how it's been trading. All right, you see the highlighted rows here. This is the past several quarters dating back to December of 2018. And from a trailing PE standpoint, we're right about in the middle ground, I would say, over the past, call it 6 or 7 quarters. There was a time back in the end of 18 and first quarter of 19 that AMD was trading at a PE of 79 with a forward PE of 40. And it's been higher and lower depending on where you would have bought in at. Most notably, the end of 19 appears to have been some of its highest trailing PEs. But today's level at 122, again, you can't really say that's out of the realm of what AMD has traded for in the past, but it certainly would feel a lot better to be able to get in at that trailing PE of 80 or 50 that were offered, roughly a year ago. If you go down a couple rows and look at price to sales, you can see that 8.4 is definitely running a little hotter than it has in the past. Price to book as well, it's been a little bit choppy in that area, but even back on 331, your price to book was 1884. So somewhere in the middle is where AMD is trading at today from a valuation perspective. All right, so let's take a look at how some of the top performing analysts are grading out AMD. This comes from the TipRanks dashboard. I am a paid subscriber of TipRanks, and my affiliate link is down below if you're interested in checking out their service and potentially supporting the channel at the same time. From an AMD standpoint, you have a median price target of $57.10. We've got 11 buys and 7 holds. That's sort of similar in the breakdown that I saw with NVIDIA about a week ago when I did an NVIDIA recap. And, chips being so high right now, the 7 holds doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that AMD is a bad stock. It just could mean that this is not the best time to get in. And that's sort of the tune that I march to as well. You've got a high price right now of $70 from one analyst and a bear coming in at a low of 33. So a pretty wide range of opinion. And frankly, either one of those prices could hit from my perspective, just because the market is likely about to enter some volatility here over the next few weeks as we try to figure out which way is this bull or bear case market going. All right, so let's take a look at the segment results or category results for AMD. Where is their revenue coming in at? And I grabbed this chart from their investor relations area, and you can see that I've circled a couple things, most notably here, Q1 2020. And here you can see that computing and graphics generated the lion's share of AMD revenue. You did have some revenue coming in on the enterprise side, and then the all other category, which is usually basically R&D type things where they're just experimenting. You had a small loss there. But out of the 1786 on the net revenue total at the bottom, 1438 of that came from computing and graphics. And this to me is probably the biggest red flag with AMD right now. It looks like they developed a really nice market in gaming and computing at all different levels, quite frankly, between premium and value with users at home or on the desktop and mobile space. What I really worry about, though, is how consolidated they are there. They make claims of working into a database on the enterprise side and offering solutions there. But from a revenue standpoint, those things haven't really taken off yet. And as I looked into some of the other similar type categories that they might compete with NVIDIA in the future, frankly, none of those things like autonomous driving, visualization, things like that, they're barely on the roadmap at AMD, and that's a concern for me. I do think that the computer gaming market is very strong, and I think AMD has found a way to insert itself into a market that will likely grow for the foreseeable future. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be banking on one market, right, to bring in all of your revenues. There's going to be a time when AMD needs to expand and get into enterprise, cloud processing, things like that, and show revenue and success in those categories if it wants to go to the next chapter of development for their company. At the end of the day, there's only so many desktops and laptops that are going to be sold in a given year. And most of those figures are relatively easy to project out over the next, call it 1 to 3 years, right? Because more and more people actually have access to desktops and laptops. And then you start to get into this replacement cycle, which is nice, but it doesn't necessarily mean new revenues being generated. I'd like to see more of a category development out of AMD before I would pick them over NVIDIA. All right, this chart right here kind of demonstrates, at least in my opinion, why AMD is trading so high right now compared to maybe its intrinsic value. And for this goes back to 2016, so I guess this is a 4-year stretch. And it's just a quick comparison with Microsoft. The two companies are totally different, but they are both in this sort of exacerbated bull market, so to speak. So we know Microsoft's been up big, 200% over the past 4 years. AMD is up 1,800% in that same stretch. So again, we're not looking at two companies that are exactly similar, but I think the warning sign for me, particularly if you look at this past stretch, take it from roughly July of 2019, AMD's seen a huge boost in their stock price and returns. So I start to wonder myself, like, how much gas is left in the tank? You know, there's no indication that AMD sales are hurting or won't continue to perform, but when a stock's run up this hot over the past, 12 months or so, I have to wonder if there's not a better time to get into it than right here near its peak. So bottom line for AMD, I think the first thing that's important for everyone here is that I'm not a chip or processor expert, and there are plenty of websites that spend almost all of their energy on that. I look at things from a sheer sales and demand perspective. So if you're talking about AMD and you're saying this processor runs better than NVIDIA and I believe you, but for my sake, it only matters if it sells. You could take a bad car, performance-wise, for example, including one that may take a lot of maintenance, but if the demand is there and it sells, then growth is behind it. And so right now with AMD, I don't see the next gigantic thing for them that's in a different category, and that's why I sort of have a negative rating on it. On the bright side, they have done an excellent job on their sort of mid-range pricing or number 2 pricing, and I got the feel that gamers in my research are really happy with AMD's performance, and there was a nice contingent of folks who would only buy AMD when they were considering which chips that they were going to purchase in their new laptops and desktops. At the end of the day, the recent run-up in the super high PE all make this a pass for me. I think that, however, if there was a market crash or maybe just a little bit of bad news on the AMD front and you started looking at the $40 range or so, then that might be an opportunity to get in. I personally would be a lot more likely to invest in NVIDIA only because I like their future growth potential that I can see and is already written on paper. It just feels a lot better. All right, guys, so there you have it. AMD stock, that's my review for 2020. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoy this content, please give me a like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video.